How do you balance some of those new AI tools and really robust fraud prevention with trying to minimize friction on the customer side and making sure legitimate users are actually getting through and that sort of thing? How would you do that? And Philip, maybe you want to take this one.
Yeah, this is probably the crux of the entire challenge within the space. Was really balancing your fraud techniques against not introducing too much friction into the customer experience, or alienating certain segments of your customer base. What I'll say is it's all about context. I think that's kind of the key word I want to hit on. Humans are really great at determining context over machines. Humans can actually identify new patterns far faster. So we have a great ability to identify anomalies. The machine learning can repeat the recognition of those anomalies, but we're really good at understanding context. So for example, let's say the rule system saw 10 local transactions probably out of one city from a vendor. And then suddenly they saw the same volume of transactions from a completely different country, corner of the world. From to the same vendor. What does that really mean? If there's context behind that transaction to say, hey, no, that's a high value customer that happens to travel globally, but they love the same vendor. That level of context is often really hard to interpret from an algorithm. But good leaders, good managers can understand that, can coach their teams to recognize those nuances. So I think that's really the important crux here. It's a decision make. All these tools are decision-making tools. They can help our productivity, like I stated before, but you need to balance that with some operational discipline and experience. And I think that's when it's done optimally.
Right. So obviously, a lot of these fraud prevention activities are happening across millions of interactions, really at scale. So how do you create that mix of humans and automation? Where do you start the automation, stop the automation? Where do the humans come in? Where do humans absolutely need to be necessary? Can you talk a little bit about figuring out how that all looks? And yeah, Philip, maybe we can start, and then
Yeah,
Alan.
I'll try to start there. I mean, I think we at t.tec have been trying to work on the right organizational construct to help run these processes in the context of machine learning and AI. I think there's new roles that are emerging. So in the beginning, there's labeling of root transactions. That's all human decisioning. That's all done by professionals with tons of operational expertise. Then you institute these rules, there's a new job about monitoring the effectiveness of the model. So how accurate is it? Is it kicking off false positives? What workflow do we want to institute if we were to identify a fraudulent transaction? And that's all done by operational experts who work with the business. And then there's the reviews. So this is sort of like after the fact. What did we catch? What did we not catch? What is this producing in terms of NPS? Is it eroding, improving? And all those decisions are made at a pretty high level to determine what to do in the next cycle. So what we see is really this really interesting evolution of like how a operational team works with these style capabilities. And there's really a lot of sort of business understanding and context that's really important to produce effective outcomes.
Yeah, you said three things that jumped out to me. And I think one was, you said it in an earlier response, which was context, right? And so overall, I would say that there's always going to be a human element to fraud prevention. No matter how much automation there is, no matter how much technology we're leveraging, there's always going to be a human element for that very reason. If the AI in our automation is set to focus on, variables X, Y, and Z, it's the human that's going to pick up and say, oh, well, maybe we need to plug this touch point over here. So maybe we're tracking transaction chargebacks and login, right? And that's being fed, and we're performing very well. But Philip, as you and I have discussed, at length, the customer service teams are being hit by fraudsters now. That's pulling that importance up there. And so that idea of context becomes extremely important, and it's going to be the humans, the human processors, who are going to identify that that context becomes important. So now we shift that over and we bring that in. So that was one. And then two, when we were talking about the value of what it does to be accurate, once that new touch point is identified as a target for fraudsters, that's when we need to identify which data, which workflows comes into place. And then just to further reinforce that first point, that's where the humans come into place. And then, of course, afterwards, we need to be able to translate all of this work throughout the organization and up through the ranks of the organization in order to get our support. AI isn't going to do that for us. So to summarize, humans are always going to be in the mix, and they're always going to be controlling this tool, this very powerful tool, but they're going to be ultimately in control.